So welcome. I hope all of you are having a good time at the Singapore FinTech Festival. And Sharanjit has obviously set us up for scams and frauds, right? So if there's any scamster or fraudster in the crowd, you'll hear everything about what these leading organizations are doing about. So very quickly about myself, I think I've already been introduced. I work for a firm called Arthur D. Little. I head FinTech, whatever that means these days, right? But I'm not the person you're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen to these four fine people. So can we start with some introductions, please?
All right, okay. So, hey, everyone. My name is Wenhui. I'm from Tencent, based in Singapore, looking after the global BD for the FinTech business.
Sandeep Malhotra. I work for Mastercard, run products and innovation for Asia. Been there for 27 years. Nobody has hired me. I tried. And different geographies, US, London, Singapore, back in Singapore.
Jim McCarthy. I was like Sandeep on the other side of Visa, the dark side, and then I decided to get a real job and go over to issuer processing. I'm now the CEO at Thredd, doing issuer processing out of London, and we process here in Asia.
I guess it's me. I'm Jeanette Chan. I am a lawyer, so don't hold that against me. I am with Airwallex. I'm the Chief Legal Compliance and Risk Officer. I don't know if you all know Airwallex, or a little bit of advertising here. We're a global payments company. We provide financial services to businesses, really focus on B2B. And we do from treasury to spend management to expenses. So I'm here to talk about security.
And she's here to keep us on the straight and narrow too. So let me start with a question which I guess is open to all of you. So please dive in, whoever wants to start first, right? Exciting time for payments. I think there's more proliferation in payment types than we've ever seen before. There's more innovation in payment types we've ever seen before. There are more kinds of players in payments than we've ever seen before. And the funny side is, if you were to look at contactless, I think every part of our body can be used to make payments now, right? The flip side of this is that it creates certain challenges, right? And these are not just infrastructural challenges, but if you look at it from the lens of the consumer, there's everything around protection, fraud, scam, right? So generally broad brush, right? Could you share what you guys think are some of the biggest risks or a biggest risk, right, as we sit today in sort of the end of 2024? Anyone can go first.
You go.
No, I was just going to say, I think you described it perfectly, Arjun, which is, in some ways, the diversification of the choices, it's the surface area. And the bifurcation of the payment system, all the different players coming into it, the nationalization of payment system, the marketplace is fracturing while crime and fraud is becoming very organized. And they're taking advantage of the communications and connectivity. And so when they find the crack, they exploit it. And they're very organized while the payment systems aren't, if you will. And so as soon as they find that crack, they take it and they run with it. And so I think that's the challenge, is how the industry communicates and gets organized around this when at the very same time they're becoming more competitive and becoming in some ways more disorganized.
Excellent.
Yeah. I think there's no one security or vulnerability which is worse than the other. I think it's just the security approaches are quite fragmented. So while competition is good and we love competition, but competitors need to come together when it comes to a security approach. Mm-hmm. I think they have not come together on that. And this is the right moment of united we stand and divided we fall. And AI is helping this fraud community to basically bolster the attacks which they never did before. So this is the time to come together. I don't know if it's manifest in form of an industry LLM, which is anonymized data or whatever, but the security approach needs to be united.
So we rated record time, 60 seconds to come up with the AI, but well done. Jeanette. We
Oh, so I was going to say, I completely agree with that, right? I do think it's a technology's arms race now in terms of who will get there first between detecting and then also creating those threats. And so I do think that the industries should all get together with regulators in coming up with, identifying what are the threats, using AI and other more sophisticated technology and tools in order to combat all of these fraudsters. I mean, I find that the fraudsters are so smart, and so they're always one step ahead of us. I mean, the way that they are wired, it's something that is very hard for us to think that way. If you're not a fraudster yourself, you don't really think that way. So I think that cooperation is very important. Otherwise, you can't identify all the deep fakes, right? All these mass data breach scams. I do think industries should unite so that we can combat it. It's safe for everybody.
Yeah, well, I think the largest challenge, well, by the way, I do agree with Sandeep and also Jeanette, what you mentioned. The largest challenge probably is most of the industry players tend to keep yourself stand still rather than keep it open-minded. I mean, the security challenge and the overall for the business advancement, there are a lot of things we want to address. There will be competitions, as Sandeep mentioned. But more importantly is actually to put our hands together, right? And we understand the new technology will come all the time. Just as yesterday we launched our Palm payment, right, in the international world. We have done this for mainland for quite a while. We just want to offer this as one of the possibility to fight for the future security concern. But it might not be the only options. There must be other options. So we need to contribute all those good ideas together. And if the industry is not going to that direction, but rather everyone keep it stand still and close loop within yourself, then we will have, and definitely will have, a much bigger challenge.
No, so excellent. So I think a number of themes have emerged. I know the title of the subject of this panel discussion is about technology and how that's going to help. But you're correct, right? Technology in isolation is not going to help. Jeanette, I'm going to come to you because I guess you'll have the best view on this, right? As said, we're proliferating in terms of payments, right? How are you actually seeing regulators, right, potentially come together with frameworks to help, right, combat fraud, consumer protection? Is there harmonization, or again, is this another story of disharmonization?
Well, I think two things. First of all, I think innovation is very important in businesses, right? But I think the business ourselves, we actually have an obligation to make sure that whatever innovation, the new technology that we create actually has to focus on consumer protection and security of payments, right? Because if there is no trust in the whole payment system, then it fails for all of us. And the regulators tend to be always a step behind, right? Because they don't, they only try to regulate. It's very hard for the regulators to anticipate what kind of technologies are going to come up and what kind of risks that are going to be identified that could come up. So it's always one step behind. And it is, I do see that the regulators are actually cooperating with the industry now. I led in UK, we have the PPP, the public and private partnership, where actually the regulators will get the industry's contribution, will share data in order to understand where are the areas that they should regulate, what are the areas that they would like the industry participants to focus on. And so I think that it's also incumbent on us to provide that kind of support. But the regulators regulators among each other, the kind of coordination among globally, we don't see a lot of it. I don't know if you guys agree with me. I think that actually I do encourage the regulators in the audience that really to reach out to other regulators, whether within the same country or in another country, because that kind of cooperation, that kind of knowledge sharing will reduce friction, will actually reduce cost, and actually will actually help the consumer protection and increase commerce.
But I'll just, Jeanette, just on that though, I just look at the UK in particular, your point, and just where we netted with the APP framework for fraud with, 85,000 pounds or whatever it was they netted on for consumer protection. I mean, at least my fintech clients, I mean, they're very scared of that outcome. It's not reasonable. This is where, again, the frameworks.
I agree. But that's because they didn't talk to the...
Oh, they did talk. They were talking all the time. It started out at 300... No, but they did, and they've been engaged. But the regulators, I don't think, quite understand the importance of counterparty risk. And I get to hear all the time about it because I grew up, as Sandeep did, and I was 20 years at Visa, he's 27 years at Mastercard, and all I hear about is, four-party model stinks. I'm like, hey, you need to understand that it's about counterparty risk. Mm-hmm. And there's no counterparty. And where this nets, forget the dollar amount or the pound amount here, where this ends is faster payments become slower and worse payments for everybody. And this is where bad regulation ends badly for everybody involved. So, the innovation that everyone expects to come from these things slows down. It ends in a bad spot. And this is where I agree with you. The discussion needs to occur. So I agree with the first principles that you're saying. But man, that's like, oh boy, what is this? And I'll use another example, and then I'll turn it back, Arjun, to the group. But living in the United States, there's not a week that doesn't go by where I get a notice saying, oh, your data's in the wind, and oh, you get another free year of credit protection. And I'm like, well, what do I do with that? Then a file of another year of it. I mean, national data, when they got breached, it was my name, address, social security, date of birth, phone number. And you talk about AI, it's like, what's AI going to do for me? Like, they could synthetic ID me to death in the U.S. I'm like, well, okay, so what account number are they going to open? What bank account? So there's very little that I think AI is going to help me with when this stuff is not being protected by the government. There's not being taken seriously. So
I'm not sure that I think that the government is not trying to take it seriously. I do think there's a lot of a lack of understanding, right? And I think that there is a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, right? Because they see all this, and so what is the quickest fix that
but it's
they
been
can
years, and no one's putting a real stick or teeth into it to say who's doing what with the data and how they protect it.
So I'm going to bring the conversation to this side of
Oh, this is our couch.
Yeah, well, we could all. I love this, right? And we do have enough time, so we'll get back to it. Sandeep, let me hang on to one part of the discussion, which was around innovation, right? Because I think there's a lot to sort of peel off here. But let's, your Mastercard, you guys invest quite heavily. You develop a lot of stuff around fraud prevention, right?
Create nice booths.
Right, and amazing booths outside. So two-part question, right? Is AI and ML starting to help you guys stay ahead of the curve, right? Especially the fraudsters. And if so, has it shown measurable success that you can share with the audience today?
Yeah. So AI is a new word, but we've been using the machine learning flavor of AI for over 20 years. This is based on, if you ever went to a good school, neural networks technology, okay? So that's been in existence for a long time, and what we do is, in real time, within 10 milliseconds, we detect if a transaction is suspicious or not, provide a score, and then the bank adds their score and decides whether to accept a transaction or not. What we are doing with this new flavor of AI is taking data from other sources and try to improve the detection of compromised accounts, which we couldn't do before. It has gone up by 200%. We are about 300% able to reduce the rate of false positives. And now we are able to even see if the merchant was defrauded or digitally attackable in real time. We did not know that before. So the other sources of data, whether it was through machine learning and Gen AI or traditional AI, we're able to enhance that. Now, the fraudsters are getting ahead of that, but it has dramatically helped in improving the quality of our fraud detection, identity detection, and we're doing this in a much more, anonymized way as well.
Thank you. Wenhui, one of the advantages of sitting next to me is you get questioned last, right? So I'm going to bring it down to a form factor. Let's talk a little bit about mobile payments, right? You guys process more mobile payments than, next to God, I guess, right here. So what do you see as the most significant, I guess, security vulnerabilities in sort of the mobile payments, e-wallet space, right? And how have you guys been tackling as you've been scaling?
Okay. Well, Tencent has been given the opportunity to be one of the very first pilot or pioneer in the wallet space, right? So indeed, we have 1.4 billion users domestically, and we have active users almost more than 1 billion every month, right? So yeah, the size is big,
Impressive.
which means we are also facing potentially a quite big challenge. And surprisingly, we see that the technology dramatically improved the security measures and also to do the AML and also anti-fraud. Give a number, right? So if you look at the number of transactions or the fraud ratio, out of 1 million RMB, we see the fraud ratio is around 1 RMB. So it's actually pretty low. If we look at the whole industry, across the whole industry, we understand that traditionally in the overseas market for e-payment, probably it's about, we are 10 times or even 100 times better than the industry average. So how could that happen, right? Indeed, the technology plays a quite critical role. Because the Weixin Pay and also WeChat Pay is linked with the social media app. Right. So technically, you need to download the app, you link your payment tools with your mobile, and then you start to make payment. Then because of this, you have, first of all, 2 layers of security. You will have the security on your social media app first. Then you have enhanced security on the payment tool side. The third thing is, during the transaction, you actually have much more closed communication channels with the end user. Right? And surprisingly, on our side, we don't see that much of stolen ID, stolen payment tool, that kind of challenge. The largest challenge for us is rather on the scam, which is kind of common challenge across all the internet-based industry. Right? So this put all those things together, that make overall the payment experience on our side is pretty manageable. While the size is getting there, with the new technologies being introduced, and also as what we just discussed about the AI, on the data mining, etc., it gives us a much faster way to react to the potential challenges. Like in 2020, we introduced one of the feature during the transaction when you send money. If our system identifies this as a high fraud transaction, they would actually pop up a window to remind you this potentially could be an issue, so your transaction will be delayed for 15 minutes, so that the sender would have the 15 minutes cool-off time to rethink about the transaction before they actually confirm it, right? And we do more. In 2021, I think we introduced another feature. So once, indeed, if there's a high risk transaction happened, then we would even directly contact you to remind the users, hey, there's something there. You need to be further careful about the transaction. So this is how, while the business scale is getting bigger and bigger, the fraud ratio actually is quite manageable. We do see the power of the technology. Yeah, and somehow that also reflects to our corporate slogan, which is value for the users, tech for good. Right.
Great. Jim, Thredd. It's a processing platform.
Yep.
You manage, I guess there's a sense of crucial responsibility that you need to maintain, I guess, security across the value chain, the network. What vulnerabilities are you starting to see as the complexity of processing payments gets, I guess, more proliferated, or different form factors emerge? Give us a view of what you're seeing today, and give us a little bit of a view of what you expect to see in the future as far as vulnerabilities are concerned. How are you using technology to overcome it?
Yeah, so again, as a partner to Mastercard and to Visa, but we kind of sit on the edge of the network. So we partner with Mastercard for a lot of the things that Sandeep referred to. So we take a lot of the tools that they have available, the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, and take advantage and avail ourselves of that. But again, we have to take advantage of all the latest security capabilities, because we host clients' data, and so it's PCI, the latest versions, DSS version 4. A lot of our clients aren't aware of these things, so we're the edge of the network, so to speak. And so things like MTLS, it's like the alphabet soup: SOC 1, SOC 2, MTLS. We're now going to FAPI, the financial grade API standards. It's stuff that clients aren't aware of, and a lot of times it's painful for them, because they're like, oh, we just want to connect to you, and where's your API? And we're like, well, it's not as simple as that, because while we're talking about APIs, we're talking about like AI, there's fundamental cyber issues we haven't really addressed here, that the world is under attack. I mean, every day there are bad actors that are pinging the edge of our system, and thankfully for us, we're still more or less a card processor, so I don't have to worry about a lot of the other issues that are emerging in other forms of payment. But even in our space, and this is what I was saying about surface area before, like everyone's kind of jumping into AI. But the bad actors are going back to the kind of brute force things that still exist. It's not like we've jumped into the future and the past has gone away, and I'm sure Sandeep can talk about this. Automated fuel dispensers. There are still people out there doing the dollar authorization and then doing, using the full transaction and running off with the fuel. There are people doing enumeration attacks, or they're doing brute force attacks to create the card number, and then they take the card number and then they go load up gift cards. Yeah. There are people using tokens. So we all thought Apple Pay was this great thing. Well, they're figuring out the card number and they're using it to create tokens, and then using that to go spend until someone's AI catches up and says, oops. There have been attacks. I can go on, I won't bore the audience, but the fact is, all of these things that existed since the 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts are still happening today. And they get recycled and they get reused. One of my favorites was the old, before there was dynamic CVV counters on contactless cards, where they used to go around the old videos like tapping. Well, now people find an acquirer that doesn't have good tools for the merchant POS, the mobile POS devices. They set up a merchant account, and they're out there creating merchant accounts and then using card numbers, stolen card numbers, and tapping away, and then they go cash out as a merchant, and the money's gone. So these things haven't disappeared. And so our team spends a lot of time finding the needle in the haystack, shutting down bins, shutting down a bad terminal at Tesco. And we do that on behalf of our clients. And so when I talk about the surface area, it's not just these future things in AI. It's like the old stuff is getting recycled. And I said, the bad guys are organized. They find the weakness, and they tell everybody, and they hit it, and then they disappear and go find the next one.
Interesting. Jeanette, I'm going to come back to the conversation which you initially had, and we'll try not to just have it between you and Jim.
Okay.
Right. No. I'm going to focus. So Airwallex operates across multiple jurisdictions, right? I want to focus a little bit on cross-border payments, right? And obviously there are a number of vulnerabilities that come around on cross-border payments, right? So talk to us a little bit about what sort of vulnerabilities do you see? But again, I'd like to take a regulatory view here. Are the regulators, at least where the corridors are critical, are they cooperating? Are they actually setting out standards, frameworks, policies, whatever the right word is, to help combat with, I guess, players like you?
Well, the short answer to your question is yes. Right? Because everywhere, like for cross-border payment, I'm sure it's the same with Tencent, we have to, because we touch money, we have to be licensed. And to be licensed, you actually have to apply and to show to the regulators that you have a very robust compliance program. And the problem we have is because there is no uniform global policies, so even though we as a company, as a global company, we have a global compliance program, and our strategy is a global strategy of complying, of ensuring consumer protection, that we actually have to satisfy each of the local regulations. The local regulations are very, different. Sometimes they're similar, sometimes they're different. And so the challenge we see in any kind of global payments for us is how do we apply our global standard and then adapt it for local regulations in such a way that will be focusing on also consumer experience, right? You can't just say here, you're going to have like 10, 20 questions, and then the other jurisdictions you're going to have 10, because the last thing we want is for our customer to do jurisdiction hopping, knowing that, hey, this is easier to be onboarded in one jurisdiction than the other. That kind of global alignment among the regulators is not happening yet, but the alignment within the regulator in any particular jurisdiction is happening. So it's a important challenge for companies like ours, where every day for every transaction that we do, because we don't do local, it's all global. So my whole team has to think global, act local. That it's easier said than done on a day-to-day basis, but that is the model that we go by. And that's one of the things that I do. One of my tasks is to meet with many regulators and hopefully to convince them to make sure that they actually have a more uniform compliance approach to payments.
Excellent. Wenhui, can I come to you, right? So I'm going to build on something which Jeanette mentioned, but also on what you initially sort of answered, right? You have a very broad ecosystem, right? And with that comes a lot of data, right? A lot of customers and a lot of customer data to protect, right? So how do you maintain trust? Are there things that you've done which are unique, unusual, any technological interventions that you really want to talk about or showcase here?
Well, I'm not sure if we should showcase something, but probably we'll talk about some of the principles regarding the data privacy, et cetera, et cetera. Indeed, we are managing a very big ecosystem, right? So there are a couple of principles we feel probably is interesting to share. One, somehow, just like you go to buffet, just only take what you want, right? Don't take too much. Why? Because end of the day, if you cannot finish it, someone else will take it and will accuse you of wasting the food, right? The same thing. So if you keep too much data, it may not be necessarily good for you, right? The second one, I think, is also equally important because we are not building the system only by ourselves, but rather go with our partners, then trust your partner. Of course, you need to select the right partner. If there are certain things they can help you to do it, just let them do it. Then we will just make sure the connection, the linkage between each other is trustful enough, right? So that you will minimize your exposure into this part. The third thing, we think the compliance in every country or every jurisdiction is fairly important. As we are moving out of our domestic country, then when we're moving into the international world, we understand that we need to respect all the compliance requirements strictly in every market, right? We take the most critical or most highest standard for this. That reflects actually back to what Jeanette mentioned. I think just for example, for data privacy, right, PDPA, et cetera, every country would always say, hey, data privacy is very important. You need to keep it. You need to respect the policy, yes. But what if one policy is not 100% the same as the other?
Exactly.
Right, so for the business operators, when you are doing the international business, so those are some of the things we eagerly want to contribute our idea, and we also want to call for the collaboration from the whole industry to make this happen. So I think those are a couple of the things. Oh, another one. For example, our payment system we feel comfortable, but we understand that we should not keep it only for domestic China. All right. So middle of last year, we opened the system for Mastercard and other schemes. All right. So we bring the international payment cards into the domestic system. Then immediately, once you put those two great systems together, it doesn't necessarily mean it's greater, right? Probably you would have more troubles, right, at the beginning. Then you need to hold the can-do attitude. I think the two teams has done a great job. The mindset is the same. We need to maintain the security. We need to anti the fraud, whatever. But the practice probably is different. So kind of lack of communication and the lack of confidence would be the killer to kill the partnership. Luckily, we didn't do that. So we feel very happy after a year of very hand-in-hand partnership. We make this partnership very successful. We see a tremendous growth of the transaction while the fraud rate maintained very reasonable. Yeah.
So Tencent did the bulk of the work then, I guess.
Yeah. But they also made a lot of money. Yeah. But that's something we called as pay local, which we announced yesterday. And the whole idea is you have international and domestic, consumers who want to use their cards, but they want to use it at locations served by WeChat Pay, Alipay, Dana, Bakong, GrabPay, ShopBack, True Money. And we're saying there are so many of these locations. And how do you get these cardholder who's traveling to this country be able to transact at this location without setting up a prepaid account or loading that prepaid account or converting money into cash at a money changer? And that's what we've done beautifully. It's more access to the consumers and it's more access to you, to international, right? So I think those partnerships will do very well.
It's incredible. I was going to actually ask you that question. You just naturally answered it before even I was going to ask you, what is, because customers want to use their payment instruments across the border, right? And not just for cross-border, but across the border. And how are you, as Mastercard, as a network, being able to deal with fraud, scams, so on and so forth, which might exist in other countries, and some other countries where actually vulnerabilities are greater, arguably. Right?
Yeah. So this is a great example of interoperability where the payment is happening, from one payment instrument applied into another ecosystem, right? So generally, WeChat Pay worked within their ecosystem, cards worked in their ecosystem. Now we made that interoperability worked. Now the whole idea is how do you take this interoperability around data sharing, fraud protection, authentication? There's work to be done in that area. But that's where these standards would come in around different jurisdictions in terms of what is the data exchange, how do you keep it anonymized, do you create an industry level, large language model, work to be done in that space. Within our ecosystems, yes, we could do that, but it is basically a bigger industry issue where people need to come together. Because siloed, it sounds great and you say, my system is secure, but unless until you see the whole picture, especially when the world is traveling and the world is dying to travel and will continue to travel as if tomorrow never happens, you need to be in these different jurisdictions and share this data to reduce the fraud and then authenticate that you are who you are.
Yeah,
there's work to be done there.
And even if you don't travel, online transaction happens 24 hours
that's right.
every night. Yeah,
that's right.
And then 3D Secure happens and everything blows up.
Also, I think that the balance between customer experience, right, and risk controls, like where do you draw the line? The more controls you have in place, the less, right, sometimes will become less customer, user experience. And so, I get asked that question a lot by my business guys. It's like, no, we want speed, we want a customer to stay with our platform, we want them to be able to transact quickly, we don't want them to have to be re-onboarded in every jurisdiction that they go.
I think you need friction. When it comes to money, people are happy with the friction. Now, not bad experience, but you want friction. So if you look at, if
That's what I'm going to tell my business guys.
Payment players,
on the payments, right?
Payment players love friction. That's how they make the money.
Yeah. When it comes to money, people are okay to pause for 5 seconds, okay? Or even 2 minutes, because they don't want to lose the money. So what we're trying to do is, so if you look at when Magstripe went away, almost gone, like 5 cards are left. But dip, when it happened, fraud is gone. No more dip fraud. Nobody's cloning the chip. Tap, no fraud happens. It's the fraud happening in the online space which needs to get reinvented, and that's where we're trying to invent something called and we launched this thing called payment passkeys. Payment passkeys, what it's trying to do is, it basically is killing OTPs, which either don't get delivered or get stolen through screen mirroring, or you share it just because it's some other number. So instead of doing static passwords or OTPs, you would basically do a payment, passkey, which is like a biometric authentication, as if you are unlocking a device. It's as simple as that. It doesn't go this flip-flop of website where 3D Secure shows up, or you go to another app to basically authenticate. It is very seamless. You stay in the merchant checkout domain, you authenticate yourself through a fingerprint or your facial scan, and that thing happens. Less friction, but beautifully done. I think that will take over the online checkout space. Payments will become better, we think. And if we standardize that, and it's industry standard from FIDO, EMVCo, and others, I think we will solve that. But let's introduce friction when it comes to money.
And that's where the technology play a role, to make the frictionless less, right? So make the payment experience more seamless.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So
But
we
isn't
have.
that opposite to what he just said? It's like seamless, frictionless, but Sandeep was just saying friction is good. I mean, the whole one-click pay, right? It's supposed to be, to have because the merchants want it. Because the more authentication, then customers will decide not to buy, right? So
When there is no authentication, you need friction. When there is authentication, life is great,
Yes.
right? So tap and go on your phone,
Right.
awesome.
yeah.
No
That's
friction.
why technology is important.
Pass keys are
Exactly.
game-changing.
Exactly.
So since technology is important, we have 3 minutes on the clock. We have really not talked about AI much, and I'll get fired and never invited again if I don't. So here's the question to you all, right? Whoever wants to dive in first, please do. On a balance, do you see AI in the near term more as a threat or as a benefit to payment security? And I would love to hear honest views.
I think it's both, right? So I think it is also a threat. I think we see the fraudsters taking advantage of that and creating industries around that. But I think the opportunities are far greater. First of all, I think AI is like electricity. It will power different aspects of your life. I truly believe in that. I think when it comes to payment, may be relevant, maybe not, but when it comes to medical and then other scientific breakage or the breakthrough which could happen, are far more applicability there. But I think the genie's out of the bag. I don't think it's there to put back. So I think we should accept it, take the pros of it. Together we fight this cyber drama which is going on, and I think we'll win. Because AI will kill the AI bad people.
I agree with that completely, but I do also think, I think there's more benefits than threats. I also think that we cannot just rely on AI, right? Human beings continue to have a role to play. I do think the traditional way of checking, because like AI is correct me if I'm wrong, that I don't think that you can use AI to detect like phishing email. Right? Some of the stuff AI still has not been able. So you need to have the traditional way of educating the customers to tell them that, hey, do not share your 2FA code. Try to understand whether the email, whether is actually genuine or not. I think that kind of combination of AI with traditional method is still the best strategy. But I agree with Sandeep that it's definitely a benefit than a harm.
I mean, for our business, I mean, it's a clear benefit. Again, as I said, as a card processor, we're using it today in fraud fighting. Leveraging the stuff that we get from Mastercard, but building on top of that and taking using it to fight fraud better than we could before, and leveraging it with our clients. And then beyond that, just in our operations, we're already using it to help just run our business more efficiently. There's a lot we can do to take costs out of the business on top of that.
Daniel, any closing thoughts?
Well, okay. I feel AI probably is indeed a threat to what we have today. All right, probably even a nightmare to some of the business operators today. But if we look ahead, then AI definitely is bringing in the opportunities for the whole industry. Just like any other new technologies introduced to the industry, it will create a new space. It's a matter of who is going to grab the opportunity and make life better. That's my takeaway.
I do have a joke I want to, which I saw a couple of days ago. So I want AI to do my dishes and vacuum my home, while I focus on art and sciences. What AI is doing is, it's doing art and sciences, I'm still doing my dishes and vacuuming. Very sad about it.
So with that very profound wisdom, I would like to thank you all. I appreciate it. I think it's a bit of a journey, but I think you all sort of said the right thing. Yes, technology has a role to play. Collaboration is critical. I think there's got to be a dose of reality and sensibility. The regulators will have an important say, whether that is around harmonization or engaging with the industry. But I think as long as the dialogue carries on, and maybe we can bring some of the fraudsters on this side of the table, which a lot of people have been doing for over the years, because that's kind of how you beat. You don't have to join the group, but we can sort of encourage them to come ourselves. Maybe the future is a little less scamful, if I may use that term. So thank you all, and please give them all a round of applause.